The history of ice cream, the frozen luxury that became everyone's favorite dessert, revealing unprecedented. There is a strange little miracle hiding inside your freezer. It is cold enough to preserve food. But for most of human history, eating something like this was almost impossible, not difficult, revealing unprecedented.
Not inconvenient, almost impossible. Imagine standing in the heat of an ancient summer, surrounded by thousands of. The people around you may have never tasted anything like it. Because to create a frozen dessert,
you needed ice or snow. You needed a way to transport it. You needed somewhere to store.
deep within this vault lies the true history, etched onto these very scrolls. This changes everything we thought we knew.
That meant ice cream was never merely a dessert. It was a demonstration of power, revealing unprecedented.
It was proof that a civilization could command nature. A king could eat winter in the middle. And then, something extraordinary happened. The technology that once allowed emperors to enjoy frozen delicacies slowly escaped. Ice houses became better, trade routes became larger, sugar became cheaper, refrigeration conquered distance, revealing unprecedented scientific. Factories replaced servants. And eventually, the food that had once represented unimaginable luxury became something a child.
But the most surprising part of the story is this: ice cream did not become one of.
It became popular because humanity spent centuries solving one enormous problem. How do you make winter portable?
And once we solved it, the world was never quite the same. Long before anyone was selling,
the earliest frozen desserts did not look like modern ice cream. They were closer to snow, ice.
In parts of the ancient world, people learned that winter could be captured. Snow could be collected. Ice could be cut from frozen surfaces and stored in insulated pits. The discovery sounds simple now. Because cold itself became a resource, and resources create power. In ancient Persia, one of the most.
These enormous domed structures were designed to preserve ice and keep food cool even through hot weather. Their architecture exploited shade, insulation, ventilation, and the dry climate. Inside these structures, winter could survive
The world of Sharbat. Fruit juices and syrups cooled with snow or ice became part of a.
The word itself would travel across languages and cultures, eventually giving us the word sherbet, revealing unprecedented. And here we encounter one of the great misunderstandings in the history of ice cream, revealing unprecedented.
There was no single inventor sitting in a kitchen one afternoon thinking, I am going to invent.
There was no single moment. Instead, ice cream emerged from a chain of discoveries spread across civilizations. Cold storage, sugar refining, trade, dairy production, flavoring, mechanical freezing, each solved a different part of the puzzle, and for centuries, those pieces remained scattered. Ancient China also developed traditions of chilled and frozen foods. Later historical accounts describe frozen mixtures associated with elite households. But we have to be careful here.
Popular stories often claim that ancient China invented modern ice cream exactly as we know it.
That is too simple. The evidence does not support the idea that a bowl of modern ice.
What we actually see is much more interesting. Different civilizations were independently discovering different ways to make. The idea was spreading. The ingredients were changing, and the techniques were becoming more sophisticated. The frozen dessert was evolving before anyone had given it the identity we recognize today, revealing unprecedented. Then came another crucial ingredient: sugar. Today, sugar seems almost boring. It sits in a bowl on.
It is hidden in bread, sauces, drinks, cereal, chocolate, and thousands of processed foods.
But for much of history, sugar was anything but ordinary. It began as a precious crop and Sugar traveled with merchants, agricultural knowledge, and empires. And eventually, European demand. That changed everything. Because freezing something is one thing, making it delicious is another. Sweetness transformed frozen water from an interesting curiosity into a serious luxury. Across the medieval Islamic world,
trade routes carried ingredients and techniques across enormous distances.
and Europe was watching. By the Renaissance, Italian courts had become laboratories of extravagant food. These were worlds where banquets were not merely meals. They were performances. A ruler's table was servants carried elaborate dishes into rooms filled with nobles. Sculptures made from sugar appeared beside roasted meats. Fruits were arranged as symbols of abundance. Exotic spices announced access to distant lands, revealing unprecedented scientific. And somewhere inside this world of theatrical cuisine, frozen desserts began to take a more recognizable form.
But there was still a problem. How do you freeze a liquid mixture quickly enough to create?
The answer would involve one of the oldest tricks in food technology, salt and ice, revealing unprecedented. When salt is mixed with ice, it lowers the freezing point of water. The surrounding mixture can.
And suddenly, a container of sweetened cream could freeze. That seemingly small scientific fact changed the culinary cook. It allowed cooks to create frozen mixtures more reliably. Instead of simply serving snow with flavoring, the texture was still not exactly what we know today. There were no industrial homogenizers, revealing unprecedented. No precision freezers, no stabilizers, no refrigerated delivery trucks.
But the milk or cream, sugar, flavor, agitation, ice cream was beginning to become itself. And once it reached
competition, European aristocrats wanted novelty. If one court could serve an exotic frozen dessert, another court wanted. Recipes traveled, cooks moved between households, books recorded techniques. French and Italian culinary traditions influenced one another. And gradually, frozen desserts moved from being mysterious court curiosities toward recognizable culinary categories. The story that Catherine de' Medici brought ice cream from Italy to France is one of the.
It is also a perfect example of why the history of food is so difficult, revealing unprecedented.
The story is attractive. A powerful Italian woman marries into the French royal family, brings her chefs.
It sounds exactly like the kind of origin story history loves. But the evidence is not strong.
The real story is less dramatic in a single moment, but much more fascinating. Frozen desserts developed through. There was no magical handoff from one queen to an entire continent. There was diffusion, revealing unprecedented experimentation, imitation, and refinement. In England, one of the earliest recorded mentions of ice cream appeared in connection with a royal.
The detail is revealing. Only one table at the banquet was recorded as receiving ice cream. The king's. That tells you almost everything about the status of the dessert. Ice cream was not.
It was not a supermarket product. It was not something you bought after school, revealing unprecedented scientific.
It was a privilege, a frozen symbol of hierarchy. And there was a very practical reason, revealing.
Ice was expensive. Before mechanical refrigeration, keeping something frozen required nature to cooperate, or required wealthy people to. Ice had to be harvested in winter. Workers cut blocks from frozen lakes and ponds, revealing unprecedented.
They hauled them into ice houses. The ice was packed with insulating material. Drainage had to be.
The storage chamber had to be protected from heat. And even then, some of the supply would.
Imagine the absurdity of it. A young East Asian woman could spend months preparing a giant underground storehouse simply so
That is the world in which ice cream was born.
The freezer in your kitchen hides this.
You open a door. Cold air rushes out. You scoop. But behind that simple action lies centuries.
In the 7th and 8th centuries, recipes became more precise. In 1718, Mary Eales published a recipe.
Mary Eales' Receipts, one of the earliest published English recipes for the dessert. The recipe is...
It didn't. Its importance is that it shows the dessert had become sufficiently established to enter printed.
And once recipes can be printed, they can travel. A secret held by one kitchen becomes knowledge.
That is another invisible force in the history of ice cream. The printing press did not freeze.
It froze the recipe. And recipes were only the beginning. As ice cream entered 18th century Europe and
America would become especially important. George Washington loved ice cream. Thomas Jefferson was famously interested in food.
And as the new republic grew, ice cream began appearing in elite homes and public spaces, revealing.
But America had a unique advantage. It had enormous quantities of ice. The northeastern United States developed. Men harvested ice from lakes and ponds during winter. Huge blocks were cut, moved, stored, and shipped. One of the most important figures in this transformation was Frederick Tudor, sometimes called the Ice King. Tudor understood something that initially sounded ridiculous. Ice could be exported. People laughed. Why would anyone pay? But Tudor persisted. He developed methods for harvesting, insulating, storing, and transporting ice. And suddenly, ice was.
It was becoming a commodity. Ships carried New England ice to warmer regions. Insulated storage made it.
And this created an entirely new commercial ecosystem. Ice could keep food cold. Cold could preserve food.
Preserved food could travel. Food could travel farther. Cities could grow. Markets could expand.
And ice cream could move with them. But there was still one problem: making ice cream by.
A cook had to churn the mixture while surrounding it with ice and salt, revealing unprecedented scientific.
It required physical effort, it required timing, it required attention, and the texture depended heavily on technique.
Then, in 1843, a woman named Nancy M. Johnson patented a machine that would help change everything.
Her invention was an artificial freezer, an early hand-cranked ice cream maker that simplified the freezing and.
The genius of the machine was not that it made ice cream possible. Humans had already been.
Its genius was that it made the process easier, faster, and more reproducible. A metal canister sat.
A crank turned a dasher inside the mixture. The movement scraped frozen material from the sides while.
That movement mattered. Because ice cream is not simply frozen cream. If you freeze a dairy mixture, you get something hard, coarse. The magic of good ice cream lies in controlling crystal growth and.
Johnson's machine helped ordinary households move closer to that result. And suddenly, the frozen luxury was becoming.
But the biggest transformation was still ahead, because ice cream was about to leave the kitchen, revealing.
And enter the factory. In the 19th century, industrial America was obsessed with scale.
Factories were learning how to produce textiles, canned food, machinery, and other goods in quantities unimaginable to.
Ice cream was waiting for the same transformation. The man who helped make that happen was Jacob.
In 1851, Fussell established what is widely regarded as the first large-scale commercial ice cream manufacturing operation.
His motivation was almost beautifully simple. He was in the dairy business, and dairy products could fluctuate.
Instead of allowing surplus cream to go to waste, he could turn it into ice cream, revealing.
Now the economics changed. Ice cream was no longer merely something wealthy households commissioned their cooks to.
It could become a manufactured product. Factories could buy ingredients in bulk. They could produce large quantities.
They could sell to retailers. Retailers could sell to ordinary customers. The frozen dessert had entered thee.
But industrial production created a new problem. How do you get ice cream from a factory too? The answer would require another revolution: refrigeration. For thousands of years, humanity had learned to preserve winter.
Now it was learning to manufacture winter. Mechanical refrigeration gradually changed the food system during the 19th.
The significance cannot be overstated. Once cold could be created on demand, food no longer had to.
A factory could freeze. A warehouse could freeze. A railroad car could be cooled, revealing unprecedented scientific.
A store could keep frozen products, and eventually, a household could own a refrigerator.
This transformed ice cream from a fragile luxury into a commercial product. And then came another invention.
The cone. The popular story says the ice cream cone was invented at the 1904 St. Revealing.
Louis World's Fair, when a waffle vendor supposedly rolled his waffles into cones for an ice cream. It is a fantastic story. It is also not the whole truth. Evidence shows that edible cone-like.
In 1903, Italian immigrant Italo Marchionni received a U.S. patent for an edible ice cream cone mold.
The Smithsonian also notes an 1888 English recipe for coronets with cream. So the World's Fair, probably.
What it did was something almost as important. It popularized the idea. The 1904 Saint revealing unprecedented.
Louis World's Fair attracted more than 19 million visitors, and ice cream served in edible cones became.
The significance of the cone was profound. Before it, ice cream was something you sat down to.
You needed a spoon. You needed a dish. The dish had to be cleaned, revealing unprecedented scientific.
The vendor had to manage it. The cone eliminated the problem. Now ice cream could walk, revealing.
It could travel. It could be eaten while moving through a fairground, on a street, revealing unprecedented.
At a park, on a beach, the container became food. That tiny piece of baked dough turned.
And once food becomes portable, its market can explode. The 20th century would turn ice cream into.
It would become entertainment, advertising, childhood, American identity, immigration, technology. The early 20th century was a golden age for the ice cream parlor. Across American cities, people.
Budget. For immigrants, entrepreneurs, and small business owners, ice cream offered opportunities to build businesses.
Italian immigrants in particular became deeply associated with ice cream vending in cities such as New York. The frozen dessert was crossing class boundaries, but it was not always viewed innocently, revealing unprecedented scientific.
In parts of Europe and America, ice cream parlors and foreign-run food businesses could become entangled with.
Food, as always, was never just food. People used cuisine to define who belonged.
And ice cream became part of that cultural negotiation. Then America entered Prohibition. Alcohol was banned nationally.
And something unexpected happened. People who could no longer visit bars in the same way began spending.
Ice cream parlors benefited. Soda fountains became gathering places. Ice cream became associated with recreation and family-friendly.
The dessert that had once belonged to kings now became part of America's changing urban culture, revealing.
But the most powerful transformation was economic. Manufacturers were learning to make ice cream cheaper.
All stations, execute docking sequence Alpha.
New packaging made home consumption easier. Freezers became more reliable. Roadside stands appeared.
Restaurants sold it. Grocery stores sold it. And new products appeared that changed the meaning of ice.
In 1905, an accidental discovery by an 11-year-old boy named Frank Epperson led to what became the.
Epperson had reportedly left a mixture of soda powder, water, and a stirring stick outside overnight, revealing.
The mixture froze around the stick. Years later, he patented the idea and commercialized it, revealing unprecedented. It was not traditional ice cream, but it belonged to the same frozen food revolution, revealing unprecedented scientific.
The idea was spreading. Frozen treats no longer had to be spooned from bowls, revealing unprecedented scientific.
They could be held, carried, shared, sold from carts, and eventually.
Then came another innovation, the ice cream sandwich, the ice cream bar, the chocolate-coated frozen treat.
These formats transformed ice cream into something closer to modern packaged food. Instead of buying a scoop,
the factory controlled the size, the recipe, the coating, the packaging, the shelf life.
The brand. And branding would become one of the most powerful forces in the story, revealing unprecedented.
Because once ice cream became industrial, companies had to answer a new question. How do you convince?
The answer was imagination. Strawberry, chocolate, vanilla, pistachio, Rocky Road, Neapolitan.
Thousands of variations. Ice cream became a canvas for consumer culture. But vanilla tells an especially important.
For centuries, vanilla was an exotic luxury associated with distant lands. The vanilla orchid was native to.
After European colonization, vanilla spread into global commerce, but cultivating it outside its original environment presented a.
Vanilla orchids require pollination. In Mexico, native pollinators made that impossible.
Then in 1841, on the island of Our Union, a young enslaved boy named Edmund Albius developed.
His technique helped make large-scale vanilla cultivation possible beyond Mexico, the flavor that would become one of.
Today, when someone says vanilla, we often mean ordinary. Historically, it was anything but ordinary.
And that pattern repeats throughout ice cream's history. The ingredients we take for granted often carry extraordinary.
Sugar, vanilla, chocolate, coffee, strawberries, bananas. All of them depended on agriculture.
Ice cream became global because globalization itself became edible. Then came the most unlikely chapter of all.
During World War II, ice cream became deeply embedded in American military culture, the U.S. revealing unprecedented.
The Navy had already recognized its popularity after alcohol was banned aboard ships in 1914, revealing unprecedented.
By the Second World War, the military understood that food could affect morale. Ice cream was not. But morale mattered. And the United States had the industrial capacity to manufacture and transport enormous quantities.
The Navy went further than almost anyone would expect. In 1945, it operated $1 million floating ice.
The vessel could reportedly make about 10 gallons every 7 minutes.
Across the Pacific, while aircraft carriers, submarines, destroyers, and landing craft were fighting one of the largest. It sounds absurd until you understand what it represented. Ice cream had become a symbol of home.
A sailor far from America could eat something sweet and cold and momentarily experience normal life.
The battlefield disappeared for a few minutes. There was a spoon, a bowl, a familiar flavor, revealing.
And perhaps that was the real strategic value. War tries to turn human beings into units, revealing. Food reminds them they are still human. The famous stories of sailors eating ice cream during wartime.
But behind the anecdotes was a much larger industrial system. Dairy farmers, sugar producers, revealing unprecedented scientific factories, refrigerated storage, ships, freezers, packaging, transport. The entire modern economy had become capable of delivering a. That would have been unimaginable to the kings who once ate the earliest European ice creams. Revealing.
And the transformation did not stop when the war ended. The post-war world was built around convenience.
Refrigerators became common household appliances. Freezers became larger. Supermarkets expanded. Highways connected.
And ice cream fit perfectly into this new world. It was cheap enough to be ordinary, revealing.
Cold enough to feel special, sweet enough to feel indulgent, and easy enough to consume almost anywhere.
The ice cream truck became a moving symbol of childhood. Its music could be heard from blocks. Children ran outside with coins in their hands. The truck was not simply selling dessert, revealing unprecedented. It was selling anticipation. That may be one of ice cream's greatest psychological advantages, revealing unprecedented scientific.
You don't need to be hungry for ice cream. You only need to remember it. Revealing unprecedented.
A scoop can summon summer. A chocolate bar can summon childhood. A particular brand can take you.
The flavor is physical, the memory is emotional, and that combination is incredibly powerful, revealing unprecedented scientific.
By the second half of the 20th century, ice cream had become global. Italy developed a world-famous.
India adapted frozen dairy desserts into kulfi, a dense, slow-frozen treat with roots far older than modern.
Japan developed its own frozen dessert culture. Southeast Asia incorporated tropical flavors. The Middle East continued traditions. Latin America developed distinctive combinations of fruit, dairy, spices, and frozen sweets. Ice cream was no longer.
Every culture began bending it toward local tastes. That is how foods become truly global, revealing unprecedented.
They stop belonging to their birthplace. They become languages. And ice cream proved remarkably fluent, revealing unprecedented.
In one country, it became pistachio. In another, mango. In another, green tea. In another, black sesame.
In another, saffron. In another, salted caramel. The base could remain recognizable while the identity changed completely.
And then came the final technological revolution, industrial food science. Modern ice cream is an astonishingly engineered.
Its smoothness is not accidental. Its texture depends on the balance between water, milk fat, milk solids.
During freezing, part of the water becomes ice crystals. The remaining liquid becomes more concentrated with sugars.
Air is incorporated. Fat helps create structure. Stabilizers can help control ice crystal growth, revealing unprecedented scientific.
The result is a substance that behaves differently from almost anything else in the freezer, revealing unprecedented.
It is solid enough to scoop, soft enough to chew, cold enough to refresh, revealing unprecedented scientific.
And unstable enough to melt into a liquid.
Folks, ice cream is always disappearing. The moment you scoop it, time begins working against you.
The edges soften. The surface shines. A drop slides down the cone. You eat. And perhaps this is why ice cream feels more exciting than many other desserts, revealing unprecedented scientific
It cannot wait. Cake can sit on a plate. Cookies can remate on a shelf, revealing unprecedented.
Chocolate can survive for months. Ice cream demands immediate attention. It is a dessert with a countdown. And modern refrigeration made that countdown manageable. The freezer does not eliminate melting. It simply moves the
Dairy production requires land, feed, water, energy, transportation, and labor.
Cocoa and vanilla come from global supply chains. Packaging requires petroleum-based materials, paper, or other industrial inputs.
Cold storage consumes energy. The dessert that once required a handful of rare ingredients now depends on. That is the paradox of modern abundance. The cheaper and simpler something feels to the consumer, You open a carton, you see vanilla, you see cream, you see a brand, revealing unprecedented scientific.
You do not see the dairy farm. You do not see the sugar refinery, revealing unprecedented scientific.
You do not see the refrigerated warehouse. You do not see the trucks. You do not see.
You see a scoop.
But the scoop is the final link in centuries of human engineering. And perhaps that is why. It is the story of humanity's relationship with nature. For most of our existence, seasons controlled us.
Winter meant cold, summer meant heat. Food had to follow the calendar. Then humans began fighting back.
We harvested ice. We built ice houses. We engineered salt mixtures. We developed machines.
We built refrigeration systems. We invented insulated containers. We created factories. We built global supply chains.
We made cold whenever we wanted. That transformation changed civilization far beyond dessert. Refrigeration allowed meat to.
It preserved milk. It changed medicine. It supported cities. It transformed shipping. It helped create supermarkets. And somewhere inside that enormous technological revolution was a bowl of ice cream. The dessert was both.
A symbol of the moment when humanity stopped merely accepting the temperature of the world and began.
But there is one more strange twist. The luxury that once signaled wealth became almost too ordinary. Think about the absurdity of that. A royal banquet in 17th century Europe might reserve ice cream for.
Today, a child can walk into a supermarket, open a freezer, and choose from dozens of flavors. No servants, no ice harvest, no underground ice house, no horse-drawn wagon, no hand crank, revealing unprecedented scientific.
No royal kitchen, just a freezer door. That is one of the most profound changes in food. Luxury is not always destroyed. Sometimes it is democratized. The technology that once served the powerful eventually. And that is why the history of ice cream contains a lesson that extends far beyond dessert. Almost every convenience in modern life has a forgotten history of struggle behind it, revealing unprecedented scientific. Cold used to be rare. Light used to be rare. Clean water could be rare, revealing unprecedented. Long-distance communication was rare. Fresh food in winter was rare. Travel was rare. Information was rare. Human beings repeatedly take what was once extraordinary and make it ordinary. Then we forget how extraordinary. Ice cream is a perfect example. The next time you stand in front of a freezer deciding, but behind that choice is ancient snow carried down mountains, Persian ice houses standing beneath desert skies, sugar moving across trade routes, Italian and French courts competing for culinary prestige, English cooks recording recipes, American ice harvesters cutting frozen lakes into blocks, Nancy Johnson turning a crank in the 19th century, factories transforming surplus cream into a commercial product, a diverse group of South Asian and European immigrants, men and women, South Asian female inventors shaping edible cones, farmers, including an elderly East Asian man, growing vanilla.
The history of ice cream is not the history of a recipe. It is the history of.
How do you capture cold? How do you preserve it? How do you transport it? Revealing unprecedented.
How do you manufacture it? How do you sell it? How do you make it available to? And once humanity answered those questions, the frozen luxury ceased to be a luxury.
It became a memory machine, a summer afternoon, a birthday, a first date, a family vacation, revealing
a beach, a carnival, a street corner, a childhood kitchen. The flavor changes, the technology changes, revealing the cultures change. But the experience remains strangely constant. You take the first bite, revealing unprecedented scientific.
The cold hits your teeth, the sweetness arrives, the texture begins disappearing almost immediately, revealing unprecedented scientific.
And for a moment, the entire history of the food vanishes. You don't think about ancient trade.
You don't think about ice houses. You don't think about industrial refrigeration. You don't think about patent.
You simply enjoy it. And that may be the greatest achievement of all. The people who came. That is what progress often looks like. Not a machine glowing in a laboratory, revealing unprecedented scientific.
Not a grand monument. Sometimes it is simply a freezer door opening, a spoon entering a carton,
and a little piece of winter, finally available to everyone, revealing unprecedented scientific evidence across the historical